Rumors are getting louder. At first, they were cautious hints in the Japanese press, in the columns of little-known economists. Then came articles in regional analytical bulletins, citing anonymous sources in Tokyo's diplomatic circles. And now, several major publications, from Nikkei to the South China Morning Post, have started writing that Japan is seriously considering the possibility of joining BRICS. Until recently, such a prospect would have sounded like pure fantasy. But today, when the Financial Times and The Economist report on possible negotiations, citing sources in Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it is no longer just rumors. It is a political explosion. Japan is one of the oldest U.S. allies in Asia, a country that for decades has been considered the cornerstone of America's strategy in the Pacific. And suddenly, a turn toward BRICS, toward a bloc that Washington calls the main threat to the world order. This is not a diplomatic game. This could become a point of no return. The reasons for such a shift have become clear in recent months. It all began with the tariff war unleashed by Donald Trump after his return to the White House. In March, he announced new duties on Japanese cars, an industry that is a symbol of Japan's economy. Honda, Toyota, Nissan all came under fire. The American market, which takes in nearly 1/3 of Japan's automotive exports, suddenly found itself behind a tariff wall. After cars came duties on Japanese electronics and high-tech components. Then, Trump struck at agriculture, introducing quotas on Japanese fish and seafood. America must come first, he declared on Truth Social, adding that even allies cannot take advantage of American generosity. But in Tokyo, those words sounded like betrayal. According to Kyoto, in the corridors of Japan's parliament, members of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party were discussing, if even Japan is not an ally to the US, then what is left? Amid this crisis, China and Russia began to act with subtlety. Delegations from Beijing began visiting Tokyo more frequently, offering new cooperation schemes. According to Bloomberg, in April, a secret meeting was held in Shanghai where options were discussed for Japan to join BRICS's trade mechanisms. Topics included settling trade in yuan and rubles, joint technology clusters, energy, and even integrating Japanese banks into the alternative payment systems already being developed by BRICS. Initially, the discussion was about observer status. But now, according to sources cited by Nikkei, the option of full membership is being considered. It is a sensation. A G7 country, the closest US ally, could move into the camp of the global south. Trade between Japan and BRICS countries is already growing at record rates. According to the Ministry of Economy, in just the past 6 months, exports to China have increased by 14%, to India by 21%, and to Brazil by 18%. With South Africa, Japanese corporations are discussing joint projects in platinum and lithium mining. Russia, despite sanctions, continues to expand its energy supplies to Japan through intermediaries. All of this is bypassing the dollar. Reuters reports that part of the contracts has already been switched to yuan and the Indian rupee. In Washington, this was seen as a troubling signal. The White House press secretary stated, "We are concerned that some allies may be giving in to anti-American platforms." Trump himself wrote on social media, "If Japan goes down the BRICS path, its economy will collapse. We will make their exports worthless." But the reality is that Japanese corporations are already seeking new markets. Mitsubishi signed a memorandum of cooperation with India's Tata Group. Sony is considering launching joint production with Chinese partners. And Panasonic announced that for the first time it will settle transactions with Brazil directly in reals, bypassing the dollar. Insiders cited by the Wall Street Journal claim that Japan's elite is split. Some, including part of the military leadership, fear weakening the alliance with the US. Others, the business elite and part of the parliament, believe that Japan must begin to pursue an independent policy. "We have lived in Washington's shadow for far too long," one senior official reportedly said at a closed-door meeting. Analysts note that for the first time in decades, Japan is showing open interest in platforms that undermine dollar hegemony. Interest in the digital yuan, participation in discussions about the BRICS New Development Bank, and the growth of direct trade channels with India and Brazil. All these are steps toward what only recently seemed impossible. And if Japan makes a final choice, it will mean not only a diplomatic break with the US, but also a signal to the entire world. The G7 bloc is losing its monopoly. Experts at The Economist are already writing that Japan's accession to BRICS would be the most serious blow to Western unity since World War II. For the US, it would be a catastrophe. The loss of its key ally in Asia would mean losing control over crucial sea lanes and trade routes. For China, however, it would be its greatest diplomatic victory. What has become especially alarming for Washington is that the process is changing the very atmosphere within Japanese society. According to a recent poll by the Asahi Shimbun agency, for the first time in 30 years, the level of Japanese trust in the United States has fallen below 50%. At the same time, 62% of respondents said that Japan should expand cooperation with Asian countries, including China and India. This is a signal that cannot be ignored. Japanese society, oriented toward the West for decades, is for the first time leaning so openly toward the East. Moreover, Japanese youth, who see China and India as centers of technological progress, are beginning to associate the country's future with Asia rather than Washington. Universities are discussing the transition to joint educational programs with Chinese and Indian institutions, while business schools are already offering lectures on the prospects of working within BRICS. Respected outlets confirm this shift. In its July publication, the Financial Times noted that if Japan chooses BRICS, it will mark the end of the Pax Americana era in Asia. Nikkei writes that Japanese corporations can no longer rely on the stability of the American market and are forced to build long-term strategies based on ties with China and India. And Bloomberg, citing sources in Japan's Ministry of Finance, reported that the first package of agreements on trial settlements in yuan and rupees between Japanese and Asian banks may soon be signed. The reaction of US allies has also shown growing concern. In Seoul, officials stated that they cannot imagine a regional security system without Japan within the American alliance. In Australia, the Sydney Morning Herald called Japan's potential entry into BRICS a geopolitical earthquake. Even in Europe, where unity within the G7 was still expected, analysts are beginning to ask, if Japan steps out of America's shadow, can the West preserve its former economic power? Within Japan itself, cautious voices against this course are also emerging. Some military circles fear that drifting toward BRICS will weaken US security guarantees. But insiders in Tokyo note, the key factor is the economy. If American tariffs remain in place, Japanese corporations will move increasingly toward Asia, and no military agreements will be able to stop it. The central irony of the situation is that it is Trump's very policy that is pushing Japan into the arms of BRICS. The harder Washington presses, the faster the process moves. And on this point, many experts agree. If the White House does not revise its strategy in the coming months, then by autumn we may witness not just a symbolic step, but a true sensation: Japan's announcement of its readiness to join BRICS. And then the world map will change for good.